So now let's talk about wireframing. Wireframing is an invaluable tool that you're probably going to want to skip most of the time, and you really shouldn't. One of the big things, especially for new coders to get through their head, is that frankly, typing out the code is one of the last things you do when you're going to be building a project, right? The big thing that you have to be thinking about whenever you're going to be building a project is planning the project so you can plan for the project to be successful. And part of planning for the project is making sure the users or the vested interests in the project actually understand what it is that you're trying to create, and they can give input to make sure you create it in the right way. So what wireframing allows you to do is in any kind of a graphical user interface environment that you're going to be creating, so whether it's a web app, whether it's going to be like an iOS or Android, a mobile app, whether it's going to be a graphical user interface app. Basically what wireframing is you literally draw out what the application is going to look like and the basic flow of how the application is supposed to work so that you can get a better idea of what you're actually going to be coding for. So literally when you're wireframing, the simplest way to do wireframing is basically a good old pad of paper and a pen or pencil. Or if you're in a technology company, all of those whiteboards that you have around. So let's say I want to create a very simple AI app. So I want to create a GUI interface where my users are able to ask AI a question and then they're going to get a response. Well, before I start actually writing any code, I probably want to sit down and get an idea of what this application should look like, right? So basically what I do is, let's say I draw out the first page here, and let's say this is root or this is home. So I just do root or home at the top, and then let's say I do ask a question. So this might be in like a H1 tag or something like that. I might make some notes about what it's supposed to look like there, but it'll say ask a question. Then let's say I'm gonna do a text box here. So that'll be a text box. And then I'll have a little button down here that will be for submit. So somebody's going to go to my web application. It's gonna say ask a question. It's going to have a text box and it's going to have a submit. So when I click on the submit, that's going to go to the answer screen. So I just simply write answer over here for what the answer page should be, and then I can draw out another page here, and then I can do answer. Let's say I want a big old answer at the top, and then basically I can have a box here that will give the answer of what the person asked. Right at the bottom of this, I can then have another button that says ask like another question. Right? And then basically that will point back to the home screen. So this is a very incredibly simple AI application. You come to this page, it's going to say ask a question. You ask the question, you hit the submit button. That will then go to the answer page. It'll say answer, it'll give the information, and then it'll have a little button down here. Now, what you can do with this is you can start taking a look at this. You can show the users and you can show the vested interest and say, is this what you want the application to look like? And so they may see this ask a question thing up here and go, everybody knows what it is, don't make that big. Make it small or something. So you're like, okay, I'll just do a little notation. Okay, we're gonna make that small. Okay, this is a big old text box, but how many characters should be in the text box? Should it be a big text box or a small text box? You can modify that here. Should this button down here say submit, or should it say ask, AI or whatever? And you can type that out here. And then that's the thing, is people can basically come and they can give you the opinions, and you're doing that with literally using a pen and paper. You're not actually having to type all of this out in actual code. Now we can go to the computer here and we can see some examples of basically what wireframes would look like. So this is some kind of e-commerce application, again, something much more complicated. So this shows you what the home page would look like. This shows you maybe the product page for sneakers. This shows you the individual product page. This would show you what the checkout looks like. And so basically all you're doing is you're drawing this out to get an idea of how everything should look. We go over here. Here's an example example of what a wireframe for like a mobile app would look like. And so again, you can basically just draw all this out without getting into the nitty-gritty of, you know, making sure your SQL statements and all of that kind of stuff work. Now, obviously, again, you guys and girls are real coders. You want to deal with real technology. You don't want to deal with stupid, you know, pens and paper and that type of thing. If you are looking for wireframe software, there is a lot of it out there. Simply Googling wireframe here, you can see there's Balsamic and Lucidchart and all kinds of different wireframing applications that you can play with. The big one right now is Figma. So you may have heard of Figma. They were supposed to get purchased by Adobe, and then they didn't get purchased by Adobe, and now they're supposed to IPO. Anyways, supposedly they're like a $20 billion company, but they do a lot of different products, and wireframing is one of the things that they're known for. And so they have their own software as a service that allows you to create wireframes. And then the good thing with using something like Figma is, since this is online, you can share it, you can have teams working on the exact same project, so on and so forth. If we go over, we take a look at the example for Figma. So this is basically Figma's example wireframe here, right? So we can zoom in. So this is a page that would show you what buttons and cards look like. Here's a page that kind of shows you what navigation would look like. Your best value proposition that shows you like different ways a page can look. You know, this is the type of thing. And so basically what you can do is you can draw all of this out in Figma. And then again, as I say, you can share that with somebody else or just get a better idea of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? So you design this in Figma and they're like, okay, so that's what it's supposed to look like. And then you get to figure out how to make CSS do that, right? Because again, as I say, CSS is a pain. CSS is a true pain in the butt. It's easy. CSS is so easy. And shockingly, a pain in the butt at the same time. So the cool thing is, right, is you create this in Figma, you know what you want to do in CSS, and then you can have this in one screen as you have your CSS and the output in the other, and you can basically tweak things until the output looks like what this looks like. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about wireframes, and this is the basic idea behind things like Figma. So the most important lesson that you can actually take away from this particular class really isn't even the wireframe. The wireframe is a very important tool, but the most important lesson you can take away from this class is that we get paid for planning, right? The real value as a technology professional is your ability to talk to vested interest, to be able to plan the project, and then to be able to implement the plan. Interesting enough, sitting there and just typing the code many times is not what's actually valuable as a technology professional. The issue that we run into, especially with young coders, is they just want to jump into the Python or C# or Rust or whatever else. They're like, I'm just gonna write everything first and then I'll tweak it later. And what you find is that's just a tedious way to do things. It is much easier to sit there for a couple of hours or even a couple of months and draw and design everything out. And then once you have that, you literally just sit there and again, you put it on a monitor or whatever, and you just look at that, you have that, and then you have your code in a different window, and you just basically, all you're doing is you're copying, right? You're turning this into code. You know what it's supposed to look like. You know how it's supposed to work. That is going to make your life a lot easier. So that's all that wireframing is. An important thing to understand about wireframes is generally they're not supposed to be functional. So in the modern world, in the 2020s, when you start doing wireframes and prototyping and MVPs, we'll talk about prototyping and MVPs, minimum viable products, in another couple of classes. Nowadays, your wireframe, your prototype, and your MVP can all be one smushed thing, right? Basically, you can go from a wireframe, you can turn that into a prototype, like that into a prototype, you can turn that directly into an MVP. So you can actually do that. But it is important to understand is maybe the workflow you're using or the technologies you're using won't allow you to easily do that. And so when you're dealing with a wireframe specifically, the wireframe is not supposed to be functional, right? you may have the ability to click through, right? You may be able to click on something and that takes you to a different page, and click on something that takes you to a different page. And then you'll just kind of have like wrote stuff in there. You'll just have some kind of like default text in there. The big thing is with the wireframe, it's not actually supposed to be functional. It's not actually connecting to a database. It's not actually connecting to a REST API. It's not actually connecting to anything else. Basically, all this is that you're drawing out what the application is supposed to look like to give you a better idea how to properly code for it.